What if I told you that some of the largest and most expensive buildings in Southeast Nigeria today are not banks, not government offices, not oil headquarters, but churches across cities like Awka, Onitsha, Aba, Enugu, Orlu, Nnewi, and Umuahia? Towering cathedrals, auditoriums, and worship centers are rising faster than commercial skyscrapers, redefining skylines, reshaping urban identity, and triggering debates about faith, wealth, development, and power. In today's documentary, we uncover how the church became one of the most powerful city builders in eastern Nigeria and what this transformation really means for the region's future. If you are dropped blindfolded into parts of the southeast Nigeria today and then allowed to open your eyes, the first structure likely to dominate your vision would not be factories, stadium, or financial headquarters. There would be churches, gigantic domes rise above residential rooftops, towers crowned with glowing crosses pierce the evening skyline, massive auditoriums stretch wider than football pitches, and in many towns, the tallest, most illuminated, and most architecturally ambitious structures belong not to government or businesses, but to faith. From Awka to Aba, from Onitsha to Orlu, from Enugu to Nnewi and Umuahia, churches are quietly but dramatically reshaping the physical identity of Southeast Nigeria. But how did this happen? How did faith institutions become some of the largest developers in a region historically driven by traders, manufacturers, and private entrepreneurs? And what does this building boom mean for the culture, economics, urban planning, and the future of Igboland itself? To understand this transformation, we must first understand the deep spiritual foundations of the Igbo people and how Christianity became intertwined with both prosperity and power. Long before the arrival of missionaries, Igbo society was deeply spiritual. Traditional cosmology revolved around Chukwu, the supreme creator, and a complex web of deities, ancestral spirits, and sacred spaces. Religion was not separate from life. It governed commerce, justice, family structures, land ownership, and moral order. When Christianity arrived in the late 19th and early 20th century, it did not replace spirituality, it reshaped it. Missionaries introduced literacy, schools, hospitals, and Western education. Churches became gateways to opportunity. By the mid-20th century, Christianity had embedded itself into Igbo identity, not as a foreign influence, but as a social infrastructure. Then came the Nigerian Civil War between 1967 and 1970. Eastern Nigeria was devastated. Entire cities flattened, infrastructures collapsed, industries vanished, millions were displaced, and then the war ended. The region faced the monumental task of rebuilding itself, largely without federal support. In that vacuum, churches did something extraordinary. They did not just pray, they rebuilt. They provided education when schools were scarce, healthcare when hospitals were destroyed, food shelter, emotional recovery, and community stability. Churches became not just spiritual centers, but engine of survival. This role planted the seed for something much larger. By the late 1980s and 1990s, a new wave of Christianity swept across Nigeria, Pentecostalism. This movement emphasized miracles, prosperity, spiritual warfare, and personal destiny. But more importantly, it transformed church organization itself. Churches were no longer just chapels. They became brands, movements, corporations, institutions with headquarters, branches, media departments, construction units, schools, hospitals, estates, and business investments. In Southeast Nigeria, where entrepreneurship and communal loyalty runs deep, Pentecostalism found fertile ground. Congregations grew rapidly, offerings increased, land acquisition expanded, and soon churches began constructing facilities not merely for worship but for dominance. Auditoriums seating tens of thousands, 20,000, even 50,000 worshippers, cathedrals larger than shopping malls, campuses with hostels, conference centers, schools, and medical facilities. This was not accidental architecture, it was intentional visibility. Because in Igbo society, physical presence communicates power. A large structure is not just a building, it is a statement, and churches understood this. Across Southeast Nigeria today, entire cityscapes have been redefined by faith-driven construction. In Awka, Anambra State, towering cathedrals dominate arterial roads, some visible kilometers away. These buildings anchor commercial zones, draw transport routes, and shift population movement patterns. In Onitsha, Africa's largest market city, churches now rival banks and malls for architectural prominence. Some worship centers operate across entire city blocks, incorporating parking complexes, auditoriums, offices, and event halls, transforming land use dynamics in one of West Africa's most densely commercial urban centers. In Aba, the industrial heart of the East, churches have emerged as some of the city's largest landlords and real estate developers. Entire neighborhoods are now structured around worship schedules. Sunday traffic patterns shaped more by service times than business hours. In Enugu, the region's administrative capital, cathedrals now sit beside government secretariats and business districts, not as secondary structures, but as skyline defining landmarks. In Orlu, Nnewi, Umuahia, and Igboland, similar patterns are visible. Towers crowned with glowing crosses illuminate night skies. Church campuses stretch across acres. Worship centers rise higher than surrounding residential buildings, often becoming the tallest structures in entire towns. And these are not cheap buildings. Some individual church projects run into billions of naira, featuring imported materials, advanced acoustic engineering, architectural domes, digital lighting systems, broadcast studios, conference facilities, and luxury interiors. In fiscal terms alone, the church has become one of the largest construction investors in Southeast Nigeria. But this transformation is not merely architectural, it is economic. Whenever a mega church is built, an entire ecosystem emerges around it. Land value rises, transformation routes shift. Street vendors, restaurants, hotels, printing shops, tailors, bookstores, and event planners cluster nearby. Some church campuses generate weekend traffic, volumes rivaling major markets. In many cities, real estate developers now actively seek proximity to churches, not factories, because church attendance guarantees foot traffic. Entire estates are bounded around worship proximity. Rental rise, commercial plots appreciate, and neighborhoods once considered peripheral suddenly become central. Churches also create employment. Construction workers, engineers, architects, electricians, sound technicians, media teams, cleaners, security staffs, clergy administrators, event planners, choir directors, content creators, and IT professionals. Some large churches operate payrolls larger than medium-sized manufacturing firms. Then there is education. Across Southeast Nigeria, churches own primary schools, secondary schools, universities, seminaries, vocational institutes, and training centers. These institutions not only educate, they reshape urban migration, student housing, markets, and population density patterns. Also in healthcare, church hospitals, clinics, maternity centers, specialist medical facilities have emerged, particularly in underserved rural towns, filling critical service gaps left by weak public healthcare infrastructure. In effect, churches have become parallel urban governments, providing infrastructure services, employment, and social stability. But unlike governments, their funding comes not from taxation, but from voluntary giving. And this brings us to the most controversial question of all. The financial power behind Southeast Nigeria's church building boom has become one of the most debated issues in modern Nigerian society. Critics argue that churches extract excessive wealth from members, particularly from economically vulnerable population, diverting funds from productive investment into monumental architecture. Supporters counter that churches are simply pooling voluntary contributions, redistributing wealth into infrastructure, employment, social services, and community development. The truth, as always, is complex. Igbo culture already normalizes collective financial mobilization through town unions, age grades, alumni associations, cooperative societies, and communal development funds. Churches simply adopted this model at scale. Offerings, tithes, Thanksgiving donations, building pledges, fundraising banquets, memorial, donations, harvest contributions, special seed offering, and diaspora remittances all feed into church coffers. For many successful Igbo entrepreneurs, donating to church building projects is not merely charity, it is prestige, gratitude, spiritual insurance, and social legacy. Church buildings become monuments not only to faith, but to wealth, gratitude, survival, and communal identity. And in a region where many families rose from post-war poverty into prosperity within a single generation, giving back through religious institution carries deep emotional resonance. But still, the question remains, is this capital allocation optimal for long-term development? As churches rise taller across Southeast Nigeria, critics increasingly ask uncomfortable questions. Why are churches larger than factories? Why are worship centers more visible than industrial parks? Why does faith seem to attract more investments than manufacturing? Some economists argue that while churches stimulate short-term local economies, they do not create export capacity, industrial diversification, or long-term structural growth. They warn that monumental religious construction may divert capital from productive enterprise into consumption-driven architecture. Others counter that churches fill institutional gaps where government fails, providing education, healthcare, employment, moral structure, social stability, conflict resolution, and community cohesion. In regions with weak governance and limited public infrastructure, religious institutions often become default development agencies. But perhaps the deeper issue lies not in churches, but in the broader political economy. Southeast Nigeria has historically faced limited federal industrial investments, infrastructure deficits, weak public sector development, poor access to ports, limited rail connectivity, underdeveloped industrial parks. In that vacuum, churches thrive not because society prefers cathedral over factories, but because churches are often the only institutions capable of mobilizing capital at scale, executing projects efficiently, and sustaining large infrastructure development without state bureaucracy. In other words, churches are not replacing industry, they are replacing government. Church auditoriums in Southeast Nigeria is not merely functional, it is symbolic. Domes signal heaven, spikes reach towards God, massive auditoriums communicate authority, glass walls signify transparency, gold accents imply divine glory, lighting systems turn night into day, sound systems amplify worship into the streets. These buildings are not just worship centers, they are spiritual fortresses, psychological monuments, and cultural symbols. But they are also competing for visibility. In an age of media saturation, branding, and attention economy, architecture becomes marketing. A taller building signals a stronger ministry. A more impressive structure implies greater spiritual power. A larger auditorium communicates greater divine favor. Churches are no longer merely preaching the gospel, they are broadcasting presence. In many cities, the most photographed buildings are now churches, not markets, malls, hotels, or government complexes. Drone footages reveal cathedrals rising above residential roofs, dominating skylines once defined by water towers and telecommunication masts. And as cities expand vertically, churches expand alongside them, sometimes faster. Another critical force fueling church construction in Southeast Nigeria is the Igbo diaspora. Millions of Igbos live abroad in the UK, US, Canada, Germany, Italy, Spain, South Africa, Ghana, Dubai, and beyond. These diaspora communities remain deeply connected to home, emotionally, culturally, spiritually, and financially. Churches serve as a bridge between homeland and diaspora. Diaspora members send remittances specifically for church projects. They sponsor fuels, windows, tiles, sound systems, roofing, lighting, floors, and even entire auditoriums. Some churches name halls after donors abroad. Others install plaques listing overseas contributors. For many Igbo diaspora, contributing to churches' construction at home becomes a way of maintaining identity, legacy, spiritual continuity, and hometown relevance, even while living thousands of kilometers away. This transnational religious capital flow into bricks, steel, glass, and concrete, shaping skylines back home in a way few industries can match. In effect, Southeast Nigeria's church architecture is not merely local, It is a globalized faith infrastructure. Where there is infrastructure, there is power. As churches grow larger, their influence grows deeper, socially, economically, and politically. Politicians seek endorsements. Campaigns begin in church auditoriums. Public officials donate publicly to building projects. Governors attend dedications. Traditional rulers sit on church boards. Clergies become power brokers. In many towns, church leaders wield more influence than local government chairmen. Their words carry weight. Their approval matters. Their platforms mobilize voters. Mega churches become not just spiritual spaces, but civic arenas. Some church compounds host political rallies, town hall meetings, economic summits, security briefings, disaster relief operations, voter education campaigns, and peace negotiations. This fusion of faith and governance raises both opportunity and concern. Opportunity because churches can mobilize discipline, ethics, community trust, and moral leadership. Concern because unchecked religious power risks politicization, corruption, favoritism, and ideological dominance. But regardless of opinion, the fact remains, churches have become some of the most powerful urban institutions in Southeast Nigeria, and their buildings reflect that power. Beyond politics and economics, churches reshape social life, marriage counseling, youth mentorship, drug rehabilitation, widow support, orphan care, prison outreach, skill acquisition, entrepreneurship training, marriage ceremonies, burials, festivals, community meetings, crisis intervention. In many communities, churches operate as emotional hospitals, places where people process trauma, unemployment, grief, infertility, poverty, illness, heartbreaks, and uncertainty. In regions still haunted by the psychological aftermath of war, marginalization, and economic exclusions, churches offer hope, infrastructure, not just building, but meaning. And meaning in unstable societies is not trivial. It sustains resilience. It stabilizes families. It anchors communities. It shapes values. It organizes identity. In this sense, churches do not merely reshape skylines, they reshape souls. And perhaps that is why people continue giving. However, the church building boom has not come without challenges. Traffic congestion on worship days, noise pollution, environmental degradation, unregulated land acquisition, poor integration with urban master plans, underdevelopment of residential zones, drainage blockages, parking shortages, waste management strain. In some cities, entire road networks become impassable during services. Emergency response time increases, residential tranquility collapses, commercial operations are disrupted. Urban planners warn that many churches bypass zoning regulations, environmental impact assessment, and infrastructural coordination, resulting in long-term sustainability risk. But in many cases, enforcement remains weak, and churches, often backed by political goodwill and community loyalty, operate beyond normal regulation constraints. This raises fundamental questions about governance, urban planning, land use policy, and environmental sustainability in faith-driven developmental models. Nigeria as a whole has witnessed mega church growth, particularly in Lagos, Ibadan, Akure, Ogun, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Benin City. But Southeast Nigeria exhibits something unique. Elsewhere, mega churches often operate in sprawling suburban campuses, remote prayer cities located far outside urban cores. In the Southeast, churches are embedded inside towns, rising within residential neighborhoods, commercial zones, and historic city centers. This urban embedding magnifies their skyline impacts. In many Southeast towns, there are no skyscrapers, no industrial towers, no financial high-rises. So when a church builds a 10-story dome, a 90-meter spire, or a massive auditorium, it instantly becomes the tallest structure in the entire city. This gives churches disproportionate visual dominance, far more than similar buildings would have in Lagos or Abuja, and this is why the skyline transformation feels so dramatic. Looking forward, the trajectory of church-led urban development in Southeast Nigeria raises profound questions. Will cities become faith-dominated skylines, with churches as the most iconic landmarks? Will religious institutions expand into full-service city center, combining worship, education, healthcare, housing, commerce, entertainment, media, and governance into mega campuses? Will faith-based urban models replace state-led development framework, or will industrialization, tech hubs, manufacturing parks, logistic corridors, and export infrastructure eventually reclaim skyline dominance? Perhaps the future lies not in opposition, but in integration. Churches can partner with government to build hospitals, with investors to build schools, with entrepreneurs to build innovation hubs, with manufacturers to build industrial parks, with NGOs to build affordable housing, with environmentalists to build sustainable cities. Faiths need not compete with development. Faith can power development, but only if institutional accountability, transparency, regulation, planning, coordination, and economic diversification are prioritized. Across Southeast Nigeria today, skylines tell a story, not just of concrete and steel, but of survival, not just of architecture, but of belief, not just of building, but of hope. Churches rose because government failed. They expanded because communities trusted. They grew because people gave. They dominated skylines because they became the strongest institutions left standing. Whether one celebrates or criticizes this transformation, one fact is undeniable. Faith has become one of the most powerful city builders in eastern Nigeria. And as domes continue rising, crosses continue glowing, and auditoriums continue expanding, the skyline of Southeast Nigeria will no longer be defined solely by markets, factories, or government complexes. It will be defined by belief. Southeast Nigeria is not just building churches, it is building identity, it is building hope, it is building legacy. And whether you see this as progress, paradox, or problem, one thing is certain: the skyline will never be the same again. If you enjoyed this deep documentary on faith, power, and development in Igboland, hit the like button, subscribe to Ten10 Media, and turn on notification, because we tell African stories the way the world should hear them. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think churches are helping or hurting urban development in Southeast Nigeria? Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and stay powerful.